When I began teaching Introduction to Anthropology courses, I was pretty dissatisfied with the textbooks out there that I thought had an older view of the stuff that I work on, which is environmental anthropology. And the kinds of questions that I'm pursuing as an environmental anthropologist are questions around, what are the culture and politics of biodiversity conservation in a place like Costa Rica? What are the possibilities for environmental justice in an African American community in Louisiana? Whose version of nature gets privileged in an environmental movement, right? And I didn't find any textbook that was talking to that, yet in environmental anthropology, that's what we're really concerned with. What I did find was a lot of textbooks talk about subsistence in a chapter about human-nature relations. And subsistence is basically how people have adapted to nature to get the food that they need to survive, and how they might modify nature to do that. But this is based largely in small-scale studies of small-scale societies. And here I am, I'm studying contemporary environmental activists, and so modes of subsistence don't connect with the kind of research I'm actually doing and others are actually doing. So I decided that in this textbook we needed to divide the chapter on human-nature relations into two chapters, one on food and the other one on environmental anthropology. And the one on food gets into some big questions that are more than just modes of subsistence. It's not just how people get food, it's the meaning they make of food. So for example, one of the key motivating questions in that chapter is, why do people eat things that other people consider disgusting? Right? Humans can eat a huge range of things, but when you really look at it, we eat a small range and everything else is gross, right? So, we're dealing with these really critical issues in food studies and food systems analysis that are front and center in students' lives, right? And I hear it every single day in my classroom. Students want to know, what are the possibilities of the emergence of a local food movement? How is industrial food causing environmental problems around the world? And so I'm not seeing that in any of the textbooks that are out there. In the case of environmental anthropology, that chapter, what we found was that, we really needed to get into globalization of environmental dynamics. And that's one of the big concerns that I have, and a lot of anthropologists have, and a lot of students have right now, is a critical understanding of global dynamics and the globalization processes. And you can see, if you want to explain environmental degradation in another part of the world, you have to start thinking critically about what are the connections across boundaries that might be related to that. And what are the ways that local communities are not just local communities, they aren't doing any of this human-nature relation business in isolation. Yet all the textbooks that were out there were kind of taking that old perspective. So when I think of, what we're doing is we're building a whole new 21st century view of what the fields of environmental anthropology and food anthropology are up to. It respects what the 20th century did. It looks at modes of subsistence but it puts it in a broader context that helps students make sense of what's front and center in the world right now. And then anthropology becomes a really useful lens for them to begin to interpret these really critical dynamics that they're all worried about.